Hello and welcome to Transforming Worlds.
Whether it be ideal or not, allows me to have the resilience to move forward anyway, and the resilience to overcome an inner critic that's telling me, no way, don't do it. Like, don't do it. There's failure. It's a possibility. It's better to just stay where you are. And the things that I believe are going to matter the most are those like human skills. It's the way we interact with each other. It's the way we kind of can think originally. It's what we know about being human. Like we can experience the output of products and services in the world and being with each other and being in community. Like AI doesn't know that. AI can't feel. And so I think like we need to really hone in and almost underscore the importance of these inner world skills, these human skills, these relating skills, because like that's what's gonna help us stay human and make a society still more human.
In today's episode, we speak to Michelle Arrazcaeta, a creative strategist and coach in the career and future of workspace. Michelle is the founder of Super Good Society, and for 15 years, she's delivered brand, design, and culture strategies for companies like Nike, Polaroid, Whelan & Kennedy, SYPartners, Huge, and Sylvain. And now, she coaches creative professionals and consults teams out of Amsterdam. She writes Optimistic Provocations and has been a speaker at events from New York City to Dubai, leaving clients with clarity on what's really going on so that they can get out of their own way and move forward. Michelle and I met one another at the Women in Design Initiative in Amsterdam, and in this podcast episode, I am excited to dive deeper into some topics that both of us are curious about. Topics like the role of identity, emergence, creativity, self-awareness, and what we can do working on ourselves when it comes to being more creative and bringing our emotional intelligence into the space of work. So I hope you enjoy the conversation and please tune in. Hello, Michelle. How are you and what is transforming in your world these days?
Hi, nice to see you again, and exciting to be here. What is transforming in my world today? I would say I'm in this midst of transforming how I am and how I am running my business. I feel like my business is at a moment of pivoting and shedding old things and allowing other things to come up. But I'm also very aware that as my business is doing that, so am I. Or in fact, it's the other way around. As my business requires and asks me to evolve and let things go, I know that that's going to impact how my business shows up and evolves as well. So I feel like I'm in that pivotal transitional moment, and how I used to treat certain things in the past, I'm actively, consciously choosing a different way to hold space and hold uncertainty and emergence, like you said.
Yeah. And how does that manifest? Like, how do you know? How can you tell that now is the time for that transformation and that transition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I noticed it in myself first, because I've been running my business for 2 years now, and there's been a few pivots that are really obvious where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of switching audiences, or the offer isn't the same. It's different. It's more logical. And then now I'm in like a moment where I feel like what's being asked of me is to show up differently and to be different. So it's more emotional rather than logical.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh, I notice that a pattern in my behavior of like, I'm in the middle of a launch and I'm trying to share and tell people about this offer. And I think in the past, especially having done marketing and strategy, I would have the list of things to do. Like, here are all the things. Here's the best practices. I got energy. I'm going to do. And that can be really exhausting. And I think I had to reckon with that and realize I'm not building a business to exhaust myself. That is not why I'm doing this. Like, I'm building a business to role model how I can work different and how work that is fulfilling also doesn't have to burn you out or exhaust you. And so I realized my own behaviors and I was like, oh, if I want this to feel differently, if I want this to feel like ease, then I need to be aware of my own behaviors and patterns. And I need to show up with more trust and more ease. And I've been saying this kind of in my mind in the last few weeks. I need to show up more in line with my energy and less in line with my effort. Like, it's not about the effort I'm putting in, it's the energy I want to show up with and emit. And what do I need to do for myself to allow myself to embody that energy?
Mm-hmm. And this is not your first transition.
No.
So you were in full-time employment. No, there's been many, but what I mean is from how you do what you do in energy versus effort, right? So you were in full-time employment and then you decided to become an entrepreneur. How is that transition from back then different from this one now as an entrepreneur transitioning again? Meaning, who are you doing this for?
Okay. So first, I kind of want to explain like a few of the transitions because I'm quite
Yes.
I'm quite familiar with this. So my like all the way going back to when I first graduated university, my first job was actually as a recruiter, which in that moment in time, it was more of like a coach, but I didn't realize it because of how the nature of being a recruiter and the nature of how the business worked. And I ended up being like, I can't do this anymore. I have to get into strategy. Like, that's where I'm drawn. That's where I'm excited. That's where I'm inspired. So I went into strategy, worked in strategy and advertising for a long time. And then I was like, this isn't it. Like, I want to make more impact with the skills that I have, the skills in storytelling, the skills in analysis and connecting dots. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to social innovation. So then I worked in that space and at a startup. And then after I did freelance and consulting at different places with different types of strategy at different levels, like upstream or downstream. And then I moved to Amsterdam. All of that was in the US. And then worked at a client side here and did consulting before I was like, okay, I'm ready to be an entrepreneur and start my own business. So in throughout my career, I've constantly pivoted and it's always been based on like gut instinct. Like, what is calling me? If the thing that was the dream that I'm in, this dream job is no longer working for me, why? Like, why is that not working for me anymore? What's not aligned?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that I think I want that I need to test out and try? And so that's kind of been my, I don't know, MO for my entire career. Like, I don't really see my career as moving up the career ladder. It definitely doesn't look that way either. It's much more of an adventure. Like, I'm like on a map and I'm just exploring these different geographies and landscapes that I find interesting intellectually, emotionally, impact wise, and that get me excited because we work so many hours a day and of our lives that I want to be able to be excited, but also contribute impact and contribute my skills to things that are meaningful to me. So that's kind of my relationship with pivots and transitions and changes. And I'm quite familiar with the emotional up and down and the logical and logistical moving countries and all of that. So when it comes to now, because then the last part of your question was,
Yeah.
who am I doing this for now? But
Yes.
was there something else before that?
No, you've answered
There's
the
that.
rest. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So who am I doing this for now? That's a great question. I think part of it is for it's a part of it is still for me, like for me to continue growing because I am a person who loves to learn and loves growing. And so part of that is like, how can I become the person that I want to be, the entrepreneur that I want to be, or the entrepreneur like the people that are role models to me? How can I be that? But then also, how can that pave a path or demonstrate or role model to others that are maybe a few steps behind me or are observing from afar and curious? Like, how can I role model what is possible? How
Mm.
can I publicly show my journey, my ups and downs, so that other people can see, yeah, it might be challenging and hard, but it's 100% doable. Because I'm just a girl from Miami. Like I didn't know anyone in advertising when I got into it, or anyone living in New York or anything like that. So I think a lot of it is like paving a path of possibility and belief, and through that helping people also build the tools or awareness that they can also believe in themselves to do that thing, whatever that thing is.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned your role models. Who are they?
Actually, it was my first boss in the recruiting company, which is it's so amazing, this story. I don't even know if she knows. I think she does, but she it's almost as if how she's living her life is always like 5 or 10 years ahead of mine,
Mm.
because she had lived a strategy career before getting into recruiting, and then from recruiting worked in the people function in some companies, and then started coaching. And so now she has a coaching business rooted in leadership coaching, but specifically around supporting women and understanding feminine leadership, pleasure, and reconnecting, helping women reconnect with their own bodies and leading from that place of embodiment. And so I love how out in the open and honest and transparent she is. I love how she's built her business in a very emergent way. And I remember having a call with her, I think a year ago. I was like, I'm not sure what to do. And she's like, well, don't let not knowing stop you from doing the things that are pulling you right now. Do those things anyway and allow the answer to reveal itself. And I was like, oh, that was like 15 minutes and that was so helpful. And she's just known me since I was, a little kid, like a little 21-year-old living in New York City. And so I really admire how she thinks, how she carries herself, the self-work that she does in order to be this way, and how she shares that. And then how she balances or navigates having a family while building a business and being a more influential public leader. So I like how she's intentionally designed her life, and the
Mm-hmm.
people she surrounds herself with
Yeah.
can challenge and role model for her too. So that is one person who's in my close circle that from afar or when we talk up close, I'm always learning something.
Yeah. And where else do you get inspiration?
Oh, I am a huge personal development geek. Like
Hmm.
I have books here, like Brene Brown. I watched Atlas of the Heart on the plane for fun, and which is one of her shows. And I feel like I'm constantly wanting to understand or be curious about myself or different ways of seeing things and perspectives, and allowing myself to shed old beliefs or be curious about myself enough to open myself up to new ways of being. So I think personal development and taking time away and time to myself to cocoon and reflect and ground is very of interest. It also means I get super nerdy about astrology and human design. I kind of geek out on that, sometimes for fun, sometimes more interesting. And I can go down rabbit holes of understanding that, because they're just different. For me, they're different methodologies or different ways of seeing the world to use as stimulus to reflect on your own behavior, your own wants, or your own desires, and how you want to live, who you want to be, what you want to build. Another thing is art. I worked from a museum yesterday, and I've been obsessed with illusions lately. So I went because they had an exhibit that someone was working on illusions and spaces, and challenging the perception of what space you're in or how deep it is. And I was very inspired by just being in an art world and seeing that. So art's a big one as well. And I think along with consuming art, whether it's film or going to galleries, I also like creating that for myself. And it's usually in the form of expression. So like collaging and playing and being playful with different pieces or worlds you can create, or expressing myself and feelings. And so I find my interests tend to overlap and be in those worlds. This emotional intelligence, self-knowledgement, understanding, art, expression, and also experiences is something that blends the two, where I can go experience an event or host an event that can take people to another place for a temporary amount of time. I find that really being something that overlaps those two interests in such a powerful way, because it can be really meaningful stepping into a world and being like, whoa, I didn't know this about myself, or I didn't even imagine that this type of event was possible. So I have a lot of fun thinking of those and attending those types of activities or events or experiences.
So do you have examples of such events
Yeah.
that you've hosted and what happened there?
Yeah. I think it was 2 years ago. A friend of mine mentioned some college party she went to. It was like a college party where people were like exchanging clothes, like different colors.
Hmm.
And I had this idea and a draw to bringing together people to have an experience that reconnected them to their childhood, that reconnected them to that playful childhood spirit that they still have within them. And so I kind of saw her idea, and it like developed into this whole new thing. And I called it the Rubik's Cube Puzzle Party. And so I designed the experience where people come with every single color that's on the Rubik's Cube. So you come with attire or accessories of those different primary colors. Yeah. And by the end of the party, you are all in one color. And so I like talked to someone who was in game mechanics and like designed what the game and the rules are. And the trick was you couldn't just exchange, a hat for socks. You had to play other games in order to be able to get the item that you wanted. So the other games were Uno, Twister, Jenga, and then we had a little karaoke. And so it was like this nostalgic, playful competition, but experience. And so people didn't know each other. I think it was like 20 people that showed up. And it was just a really funny experience to see the competitiveness come out, the like people on Twister and tutus and red wigs, and there was like a little photo booth area. And so I just remember that being really fun. I like came out to host with one of those kid microphones that light up, because it wasn't a real microphone. So it was really playful. And, at one point I'm like, I got to do this again. I wonder how you would make this work with 100 people, like in a park. It would be a lot more complicated, but it was cool to set up the temporary rules for this moment in time to help you like walk away from the reality or the world that we're in right now and just play games, like kind of come back to this nostalgic era of Rubik's cubes and Jenga. And yeah, so I found that a really fun project, like
Yeah.
personal project to just try and see what happens.
Awesome experience, and I'm sure for the participants too. So in design, we say, well, you and I know each other from a women in design group that we have in Amsterdam. And you probably know this. In design, we say there is no action without reflection and no reflection without action. And it seems that this type of game is a type of game that allows you to do both, to,
Mm-hmm.
put it in practice, but also while you are doing it, reflect upon what is happening, how you are relating to others, who you are becoming, what parts of you are shedding in the process, literally every time you swap a piece of clothing for another color. What things to aim for and who you are. So it's a beautiful example. Thanks for sharing it. How do you deal with failure and how do you see failure in your
Mm.
clients or in the people around you? How do you experience it?
Yeah. So in addition to my kind of journey as a strategist, I'm also a coach. So failure is part of the life experience. Like we all have to experience that. And I think there's there's a difference between something not working out as planned and something being labeled as a failure, because I think some like connotation is so important and language is so important. So a lot of times I think like, well, what did you gain from that thing not working out? What did you learn? What did you need to let go of? What did it ask of you that you had to show up with more? Like, did you need to show up with more courage and bravery? Did you need to speak up? Did you need to comfort yourself because it was hard? Like, I think failure, there's always something to gain when something doesn't work out. And I think failure sometimes is attached to an identity rather than an experience. And that's where it can get dangerous, and there needs to be a fine line and separation. So like something like, a client not getting an interview or not being able to talk with someone who's a role model, or a process or experience not working out, like sometimes people can say I'm a failure and they attach that event or that experience to themselves, or and then it becomes self-blame. And so I think it's really important to separate it and to talk about it versus me or I. And when it is attached to identity, in my mind it's always then somehow connected to inner critics, and like the inner critics that come up and can tell the stories or repeat the stories and the limiting beliefs or the negative self-talk that we all have because we're all humans and we grew up in this world. And when you can separate yourself from the inner critic and see that thing as separate from you and as something that failed or that didn't work out or wasn't what you expected, there's all of a sudden distance between you and that thing. And the shame is released from that event from happening. And I think that can lead to transformation and emergence and reflection, because you're able to see it as separate from yourself and you're able to see what you can do with it now, rather than, oh gosh, that was all my fault or it wasn't good enough, which is usually the things that are said and repeated. So I think failure is interesting. There's a lot of layers to it. It's peeling it back. I'm constantly reframing and exploring like what that actually means for me. And if it was the worst case scenario, how do I cope? Okay, let me write that down. Let me explore that. Let me live in that space for a little while. If this thing were to completely blow up in my face, how would I feel? What would I do? How would I cope? And how would I get through it? And once I can relate to that worst case scenario, it's no longer a worst case scenario. It's
A scenario.
it's a scenario. Yeah.
Right.
Like the fear is taken out of it. And so I think sometimes, yeah, confronting it and exploring those possibilities, whether it be ideal or not, allows me to have the resilience to move forward anyway, and the resilience to overcome an inner critic that's telling me, no way, don't do it. Like, don't do it. There's failure. It's a possibility, like it's better to just stay where you are. So the distance and the going into that space for a little while allows you to have that resilience and self-awareness.
Yeah, I think that goes for both the inner critic as the outer critic. Both of them are invitations to see how we can connect to our intention. Like, what do we really aim for? And then try again. Shuffle and try
Mm,
again. And you and I recently had an experience of what could be dubbed as failure, because together with two other wonderful creative ladies, we submitted an idea for a panel, and we never even got a response. I think that that's quite interesting when we think of the times we live in. And you referred to astrology. You may or may not want to make an astrological reference to this question, but we are at a time in which identity is shifting. And because of that, there is like an exacerbated polarization, duality, kind of black and white thing. It's like when we look back at ourselves and our submission with this panel, which was absolutely wonderful and everyone was excited about, then you start thinking, okay, what happened? Why weren't we seen? Why wasn't this embraced? Like, if we were so enthusiastic, where did we miss the mark? Or what label was put onto us? Or what does this say about how others see us, which may or may not be how we see ourselves? Probably there are two entirely different things. But here we see like the outer critic at work saying, hey, they
mm,
didn't even bother to give us a sign that they had received our submission, let alone even consider it. And this requires a kind of different kind of resilience. So how do you look at that, at sort
mm.
of the transformation of everyone's identity in a world that is unfolding, with social norms that are changing, with cultural narratives that are changing, and how to adapt oneself to the, ongoing motion of life while this happens?
So one thing I was thinking about as you were talking around and just discussing and exploring the situation, I I'm curious how you define outer critic versus inner critic, because even some of those statements could be an inner critic at play, like, oh, what did we not do versus maybe they were so busy and it was too soon that they just didn't even look at that inbox
Right,
for
right.
more submissions.
No, so for me, both the inner and the outer critic are different manifestations of the same, which is things that trigger us. And of course, things
Mm,
trigger us because of the narratives we carry within us, which may be linked to our personality, to our socialization, and it's how we grew up, the institutions we were a part with, the cultures we were a part with, etc. So it can come from many fronts, but undoubtedly, both the inner critic, which is oftentimes an internalized outer critic,
mm,
and the outer critics lead us to question ourselves and
mm,
question that potential failure, which is just a learning opportunity and an opportunity to pivot and an
mm,
opportunity to think about what really matters to us and sort of dig deeper into our own identity. But these things happen continuously in a world that is so polarized and set in motion by so many things in our context. And the astrological perspective is what is known as the beginning of the age of Aquarius, and the fact that we come from a previous era in which there were other principles that organized behavior, relationship, and the whole enmeshed network we're a part of, moving to a different kind of organizing system of how we do things and how we see ourselves in the world. And moving from one system to the other system, whether we talk about it from an astrological perspective, a cultural perspective, a zeitgeist, the
mm,
times that we live in, still creates a lot of questions about who we are, how we function, what we
mm,
do, and how we transform or not
mm.
something else, the next version of ourselves.
Yeah, I think identity can always be shifting. Like reinvention, like you can reinvent yourself regardless of where you are in your journey. And I think reinvention on behalf of yourself is one thing, and reinvention to appease others or the system or the thing you are trying to maybe get approval from is an entirely different thing and is a disservice to you because ultimately it's not going to be satisfying because you're molding and contorting yourself to fit into a systems box or somebody else's box or version of what you should be, that it's just uncomfortable because you're
Yeah.
contorted and you're not yourself,
Yeah.
rather than the reinvention of oneself being from within and coming from the self-awareness in what you want to keep, what you're ready to let go of, what is truly you, what is your authentic, you know, thing that you would love to continue doing, whether it's in your life or just in your work or whatever it is. But I think the reinvention of what you do or who you want to be, or perhaps the reinvention is also just becoming more of you and being more comfortable with that, maybe being a bit more vague, or you know, being more like not as clear and it checking a lot of boxes. Like I think that's okay too. So I think there's I think I'm kind of like exploring this question at the moment, so it's really relevant for me right now. But I think oftentimes I've even struggled with saying I do this one thing or I provide this one value, because I've done so many different things, because that is part of who I am. Like, I love being a strategist. I love thinking, connecting dots, problem solving, collaborating, but I also love being a coach, which is similar skill set, but
Yeah.
a completely different role. I'm not
Yes.
solving any freaking problems for you. I'm holding space. I'm allowing you to navigate it comfortably and then sometimes uncomfortably when you want to get to the truth of something. But I'm not solving any problems here. I'm allowing you to find your own path. And then I also love speaking and making art and expressing myself in different ways. So I think reinvention for yourself doesn't necessarily mean like certainty, or you have to know exactly what that means or the value it brings. Like sometimes the value, you're like, well, is that just capitalist language? Like we always have to provide a value. Like, what if you're just yourself and you present in that way and allow that to connect and resonate with people? And the thing you bring is your perspective, and the thing you bring and that you offer is just connection. So I think identity can be many things, not just one thing. And identity can shift as you live your life and as times and the world change and evolve. Like your identity can evolve or can evolve. Um, and I think what's important in the identity area is the self awareness, like knowing what your patterns are, what things you want to keep and what things you want to leave, and being comfortable in that. I think self-awareness, I couldn't underscore that enough. And then the second piece to this identity, and not falling into traps of trying to be something for something else that's constantly evolving so that you can never win anyway, is not waiting for permission anymore. I was literally writing about this today. Like, what would it be like to give yourself permission rather than wait for something or someone to give you permission to do that thing or to see you and validate you and recognize you? What if you were to just give that to yourself and say, I don't need them. I don't need that thing. I'm just going to do it myself and see what happens and
Mm-hmm.
see what you learn, and then see how you then evolve and change your mind and you decide on different things. So I think giving yourself permission to be that thing, that identity, is also half the battle.
Yes, for sure. And you've beautifully moved away from failure and into success. How do you know when something is working and when something's
Mm,
successful?
yeah, I think, well, first defining what success even means for you. Like, I think that's oftentimes talked about, but not really done. Like, what does it really look like? And then asking, why is that on your bullet list of what success is? Like, what is that giving you? How does it feel? What stories are behind that? And then asking yourself, if you were to have that feeling today, what would you be doing? You know, like how could you feel that feeling of success right now? What can you give yourself and allow yourself to feel that? Because I think sometimes people are scared of success as well, because it means, what do you have to lose? when you get to a successful place? Or, you know, who do I have to become? Or how do I need to work? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to be more vulnerable or out in the open? And so I think success has as many um, triggers, like you mentioned earlier, around it as
For
failure.
sure.
And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think people really talk about that. So I think for me with success, a lot of it is how I feel. How do I feel in my body? How does my nervous system feel? Like, am I relaxed? Am I joyful? Am I excited and inspired? Am I more thoughtful and reflective? Like, success is the things that I'm doing in my life because I only have this life to live. Like, what am I doing in my life that is, you know, allowing me to have that energy? And it goes back to the energy over effort. Like, success is no longer like proving myself. I'm giving myself permission to just do whatever the hell I
Yeah.
want.
And I also
And
like what you said about the stories. I had a absolutely wonderful coach, a Dutch gentleman. And when at some point during our coaching process, we were talking about success and how sometimes it can feel as a double-edged sword. Like someone is giving you a compliment, but in disguise, there's kind of this passive aggressive energy. And of
mm,
course, as any good coach would do, he threw it directly back at me, right? And he said, he asked the Brene Brown question, which I didn't know came from Brene Brown. And he said, what story are you believing? What story, what narrative do you need to believe to interpret that statement? Because you are putting that filter on it because of your stories that you seem to believe in. And maybe it's time to build another story.
mm,
And that is, of course, an exercise of design.
mm,
But this ability to realize that we are immersed in all of these sort of constructed ideas, and that in the same way that we build them, we can renew them, revisit them, and build them again, is really important. On the
mm.
subject of Brene Brown, you talk a lot about emotional intelligence. What is that? And what does that have to do with a super good society?
Yeah. Emotional intelligence. I would say, well, I listened to a masterclass from School of Life on emotional intelligence, and it was there was a neuroscience researcher, and I'm forgetting his name right now. I'm blanking out. The guy who essentially coined the term, and so they had all these different perspectives on what emotional intelligence is, and from that and my own experience, I would define emotional intelligence as awareness of what you are feeling, sensing, and thinking. And the thinking is also the believing part, again, with those stories. Like, what stories are you believing or choosing to continue to believe? And, you know, where are they coming from or how are they making you feel? Another thing with emotional intelligence, especially in the design and the creative world, which is where I like to play, a lot of times there's such creative people. And even though creative people are more connected to emotions and gut instinct, I would still argue we're dominantly playing in our head. Like,
Yeah.
we are disconnected from our body, and our body has so much intelligence to share because emotions show up in our body and they show up in different places and they show up differently for different people. So when you feel warmth or you feel tingling or you feel constrained and in different parts in your neck and your chest and your gut, like all of that are your emotions telling you something, and the sensations are the language. And emotional intelligence for me is being able to pick up on that, to notice that, to be able to read that language, understand that, and communicate that either to yourself or to someone else. You know, what is it that you need? What is it that you're going through? How can you communicate those needs to somebody else so that the collaboration can continue, or you can come back to that conversation at another time? So I think emotional intelligence is such a key to better workplace, better working conditions, better leadership, better creativity, better careers that are more fulfilling, because you're able to do more than just logically think through the steps and what you're trying to control, which are often dominated by stories, but it's allowing your body and your emotions to be part of that process and to be another source of information and allow you to make decisions according to yourself and what's aligned for you and how you want to be in community or in the world or what you want to contribute rather than what you think you need or should do. And that's honestly how it connects to super good society. I'm a creative strategist and a coach, and I help people and teams get out of their own way, right? Using emotional intelligence and creative strategy tools to help people see new perspectives, to help people come at different angles, see new possibilities, or see how they're in their own way so that they can move forward and they can progress or make the changes they're ready to make. So, you know, I do this, I bring all of this skills and personal experience. I feel like I'm constantly thinking about my own experience in the world because I'm hypersensitive and pick up on energy and emotions and all of that stuff. And so I think I've had to learn to manage and navigate my own self in order to adapt and adjust, and then also learn like what are the learned behaviors that are just not working for me anymore, and then what do I really need. As I get older, I realize I need a lot more alone time. I need a lot more downtime to decompress and not take on other people's stuff for myself to come back to my energy, because I kind of operate at a high energy, but not when I need the downtime. So yeah, whether it's one-on-one coaching or like workshops and using the energy of the room and what's coming up, or, you know, helping a company understand its culture, like all of that is using the intelligence of the system, or right, the system, whether it's the body and the inner world that's happening or the inner world of this team unit, you know, like that has its own thing too. So I just get really excited and nerd out about how emotional intelligence is more than just soft skills, which is what everyone usually talks about.
Yeah, I think that is part of the labeling and identity and sort of identification of things that we're transitioning through as a society, because people who are professional creatives and then sort of the creative profession as a domain are very emotionally intelligent and very sensitive, but at the same time are applying these sort of social norms and learned behaviors to apply this via their left brain self. So they're sort of rationalizing things that emerge from a different space in order for that to fit into the world. And I personally, having worked in these environments, some people really develop significant mental health problems because of this, because you're trying to be both and the system exploits this creative, emotional attunement with the energies that be, but at the same time wants you to perform. And these two things are very, very difficult to reconcile as human beings. You know, perhaps in the age of AI, this will take different forms. I don't know, where we, you know, combine the artificial intelligence with the emotional intelligence, if we're savvy enough to do that well. How do you look at the rise of AI?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people are focusing only on building the skills to adopt and to use AI rather than seeing the two as complementary. Like we're going to need both because we're still humans and we still need each other to work, like to decide, to collaborate, to challenge, to critically think, to call each other out if that is needed. Like I think there's still going to be humans in different workplaces, and especially in the creative field. AI will start to change what that looks like and the roles and all of that, but the two are going to coexist. And the things that I believe are going to matter the most are those like human skills. It's the way we interact with each other. It's the way we kind of can think originally. It's what we know about being human. Like we can experience the output of products and services in the world and being with each other and being in community. Like AI doesn't know that. AI can't feel. And so I think like we need to really hone in and almost underscore the importance of these inner world skills, these human skills, these relating skills, because like that's what's gonna help us stay human and make a society still more human, because that's what we're going to experience when we walk outside.
What is needed for that? And let's assume that we develop into this super good society and we fast forward 20 years, 30 years into the future. What does that super good society look like, feel like, importantly, and how does it function? Like, how did we get there? How do we learn how to do that? And once we do, what does it look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting. What does it feel like? I don't know what it looks like, because I have no idea with the pace of technology, how things evolve, what's happening in the world today could not have been guessed 5 years ago. So I think what it feels like is the thing that I could answer the most. And what gets me excited is seeing other people lit up. Like, I love seeing people excited about what they're doing, about their life, about what they're building, who they're with, how they're intentionally designing their life. Like, I'm a career coach focused on the workspace, but it's a conduit to a life. It's a conduit to how you're living your life. And if we can build a society where people are more conscious and mindful of themselves, of their decisions, of their impact, like, how much better will the world be? Like, how would we make decisions differently? How would companies think differently about their impact? How would politicians make decisions differently? Like, if we were more conscious and more connected and connected to our feelings, how much more could we prevent? There's so many unintended consequences because we don't have the ability to think through, or we make decisions from a surface level place. But if we were more aware of why we are making those decisions or what is driving those decisions, I think the intention and the future we can build, or the future we build, can be much more intentional and can be much more impactful. And I think there'd just be so much more justice and equity and a future that we would all enjoy to live in. And that, yeah, that vision, like, I feel like we can still do it.
Oh, for sure we can do it. I think it's our birthright, and it's innate in us. I mean, probably along the way we have to make very intentional choices, as you say. The super good society is a world of intentionality that we live and breathe. And I always like to say that when people are connected to their essence and they're in the zone, then everything balances out. If we're not trying to be something else, if we're not trying to be what is expected of us, what we have come to expect of ourselves, but we simply be in that place where we are joyful and happy, then we bring in this energy, and that multiplies and exponentiates very, very quickly. Because, as you said, we give permission to ourselves and we give permission to others to bring that into our common spaces and create our common future. So I love that.
Yeah, one more thing I'd like to add that came up as you were talking is because a lot of what I've been even talking about has been the individual element, right? Like how an individual can change their circumstance or their world. But I strongly agree with how important and how much leverage one individual can make on their world, which then impacts others' worlds, and the domino effect of that. And I think Adrienne Marie Brown calls it fractal. Do you remember what it's called? Fractal or fractional strategy.
Yes.
Where it's about the sum of all the small pieces affecting each other and how that can grow and how that can make large scale change. And so I think it's true even within one person. One small change in stopping a pattern of thinking can change how you behave. One small thing in a norm that has changed in a work culture can be a leverage point and change a lot of how that culture reacts and what it becomes. And it's the same with society as a whole. Like one company acting and showing how it can be different and the impact that can create and the benefit that has on the business and on society can influence other businesses as well. So I think the power of one is huge.
Yeah, I love the reference to Adrienne Marie Brown. She cannot be quoted enough, and her work, which is absolutely wonderful, and in which she indeed touches upon these topics because she was exposed to the thinking of others that allowed that power of one to exponentiate and essentially transmute and transform through the different interpretations and forms that people give to that. And I think that that's the magic of that super good society, right? Where we bring our best selves and therefore invite and allow others to bring their best selves in whichever form that may take. So we don't impose dogmas, we don't impose principles, we certainly don't impose identity. We talk about what we can be co-creating and co-designing together.
Yes.
And it's like a potluck dinner, isn't it? Like everyone brings their favorite dish, hoping that when the others get a taste of it, they will love it too, and ask for the recipe and give it a next twist and a next twist, and it all keeps evolving together. Beautiful. Yeah. So tell me, where can people find you and find your work, Michelle?
Yes. My website is supergoodsociety.co. I am on LinkedIn and quite active, chatting away. So you can find me, Michelle Arrazcaeta, on LinkedIn. And I write a weekly, I call it a thought letter instead of a newsletter, because it really is thoughts and musings and perspectives on work. And you can get that weekly if you sign up. You can do that on my website. Eventually there'll be a whole little world, not to play off of Super Good Society, but a whole world you can play with. I have a lot of ideas of how to make it more than just a newsletter, but a space that you can play in and explore. So coming soon.
Oh, cool. Can't wait for that. So we always close the episodes with one last reflection that is based on something I wrote 13 years ago, which was called The Quest for Questions. And essentially what it says is that when we face the unknown, when we face the future, which doesn't exist, we need to form it together. We don't have answers. So we need questions. And it's the questions that open those spaces for playfulness, for thoughtfulness, for community and connection. What is your next question, Michelle?
What came up for me was, what are you scared of feeling?
That's a great question. Do you know why it came up? Or what you are trying to say through it?
I think it was the thing that's stopping or preventing more of these reflections on ourselves is because we're scared to feel. And we're scared as humans of what we would feel. And so I think acknowledging that that's even there is the first step to acceptance, and noting the fear and noticing that and separating it and gently exploring it could also make that fear less strong, can lower the intensity and allow you to open that door little by little, and maybe even with some playfulness. Playfulness is not excluded in this world of emotion. I think it can be deep, it can be reflective, but it can also be fun. It can also be light and playful, to explore and think about what you also gain, what you also get to experience and feel. That feels great. Yeah.
I think fear is one of those things that the more you try and get it out of the way, the bigger it grows. And it can be so revelatory, as you're saying. So that's a great question. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I'm just excited to be here and glad we did this.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.